We're sitting here in April. I mean, the Red Sox fans are already panicking. It's a little bit late for a lot of students to kind of change course if they're still interested in private sector work for this summer in 2011. Is the same thing true in the public sector?
No, and I think, you're segueing very nicely into my role on the panel as a former law clerk and former assistant U.S. attorney. I'm here to represent the non-private sector opportunities. And it is true that a lot of non-law firm employers, especially the employers that aren't large law firms that recruit early on campus in your 2L year, a lot of those employers are still looking for people. So to echo what Steve was saying, when I was a law clerk, we had lots of judicial externs in chambers, and they did great work. And there were recommendations and for them at the end of the summer, depending on the quality of their work. When I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, we also had a great group of interns. And in fact, I actually interned in the U.S. Attorney's Office as a 1L, the office that I later returned to after a few years practicing at a firm. So a lot of the time, these can be tremendous opportunities to work in government, to work for a judge, to work for a U.S. attorney. And I would also echo what King was saying earlier. You do have a lot more flexibility with your 1L year. People have done all sorts of creative things in their 1L year. They worked overseas for a Supreme Court of another country. They worked for a public interest group doing pro bono type work here in the United States. They worked or externed for a judge, state or federal. So there are a lot of opportunities for your 1L year. And if you're still interested in working for a large law firm your 2L year, there are not, aside from things that might be illegal, there are not that many things that you would do as a 1L that would really preclude you. I know people who worked as research assistants. I know people who clerked for judges at various different levels of the judiciary. So I think you have a lot more flexibility as a 1L, and I would really encourage you to look at government and judicial opportunities if you are at this point in the season still looking for employment. One thing I would add, I was talking to a lawyer who works for, she's probably already filled this position, so don't flood her with resumes, but I was talking to a lawyer who works for the New York City Department of Education, and they have mostly hired, but they had one person pull out very recently because of a family situation. So sometimes there are these last-minute openings, and you should keep your ear to the ground. And as Anastasia was saying, look at all of your networks and connections and really try to stay plugged in.
That was certainly what the kind of advice that we got when we were coming out, when the economy was hot and booming. It was my 1L summer. I worked for on a campaign for the current New York State Controller, Tom DiNapoli. Steve, are you saying that this kind of, especially after your 1L year, that this kind of freedom is still available to people?
I mean, absolutely. That example, by the way, if you have an interest in politics, is, I think, a great thing to do, because you end up meeting people, you end up seeing things that you've never seen before, and that sort of breadth of experience can translate into very positive things for you in your career. Forget about what it does for your quote-unquote resume, in my view, because it kind of breaks down into, most people coming out of law school are not going to go to work for large law firms, even though there's this big, intense focus on that. The truth is most of them aren't. But for those that are, they're going to be judged pretty much by their first-year grades. And those first-year grades are going to determine whether or not, and then how they interview, are going to determine or not whether or not they get an offer for somebody. From someone from a large law firm. The large law firm isn't going to say you worked at a political campaign, you didn't work in a judge's office, you didn't go to work for the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. They're not going to look at those specific things. They might make you slightly more interesting, they might pique the interest of a particular interviewer, but really they don't, quote, qualify you in any greater way or lesser way. So I think that the more that you can do that kind of hits with where your interests lie, broadens you as a person. I know that that's blasphemy in the law firm world, but makes you better at what you ultimately think you're going to do. I think is really the way to go.
Now, King, as a hiring partner, you've really got to be concerned with not just with how these people are going to develop at your firm as kind of competent attorneys. And while I would love to agree with David and Steve about the nice growing experiences of doing something like a political campaign, Lord knows I didn't learn anything about being a lawyer those 3 months. As at a firm like Aura, you guys still what would you suggest to a 1L who really is trying to hone their skills perhaps going forward?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I think really finding something that you're interested in your first summer can be great. That's a nice opportunity. I think that the key takeaway for me is at least at our firm, and I'm sure many others, because of the way the economy has played out over the last few years, because it's unusual for first years to have that first year summer associate experience, you're just not going to be judged by doing public interest work or working on a campaign or that. None of that will prohibit a really great big law firm job if that's what you're looking for in the second summer. So find something that's interesting to you. Do really well at that job. I think those are probably the stronger avenues.
Anastasia, to close the loop on my friend Tom DiNapoli, I've had 3 jobs since that summer, and at various points I really needed one, and at no point did I contact Tom DiNapoli or anybody in his office. Now I'm going to guess that you're going to tell me that was probably the wrong way to go.
You want to keep friends. You never know when somebody's going to help you, and you have no idea when somebody's going to be able to find a job for you. I mean, I've had offers in the most random places. I went to a mixer for a bunch of college alumni and got an offer that night. I've talked to a former colleague, and I was saying, maybe I want to do a transition into a different career. What do you think I should do? She's like, well, actually, we used to have a former client who does exactly what we're talking about. Let's set you up with an informational interview. And I got in on the informational interview and got an offer. Didn't even expect it. No, do your work and really express to people what your interests are. Show them that you're curious and you're willing to work hard and that you understand what it is that you're interested in. And at that point, people will listen. I mean, I think I want to go to Steve's point. We're talking about the hidden job market, which is a little bit different than actual firms having OCI, in the sense that networking and the hidden job market work together really well, because as people find out there's an opportunity, if you're on their radar, they're going to reach out to you. And if they know that you're a hard worker and that you're interesting and curious and resourceful, they're going to reach out to you. And I think that's the real benefit of networking. Yeah, you may not have wanted to call them up and talk to them, but maybe there's somebody else in that office that you want to go grab some coffee with and just see what they're up to. And maybe they'll alert you to something that's going on that you want to be doing. So keeping connections, although networking being a dirty word, is really how you get jobs and being smart about it.
And you could do it without being obnoxious, too.
Exactly.
There is a line that you have to be
definitely
respectful of people's time, and don't clutter their email boxes, but you've got
polite
to
pest.
use...
Be a polite pest and show an interest in them. Ask them questions. Listen. Don't come in and say, I'm looking for a job. Do you have anything? That's probably not going to help you. But if you listen to them, it's great.
The one thing I was going to say that you touched on, Steve, before was that a lot of these really big law firms are hiring based on the first year grades. And particularly if you don't have those jobs lined up after your first or second summer, and you are going to have a kind of a longer-term approach to the job market. Those who were blessed to do exceptionally well in their first year are not going to be trying as hard their second or third year because, frankly, they don't have to. They're focused more on doing really well in the summertime, and their grades will go down. I think it is absolutely critical to just stay focused on your grades during that second and third year, because to the extent that you do get out and get a job that maybe is not your ultimate end goal, you want to be able to move, and frankly, particularly early on in your career, firms will be looking at your grades, and it's great to be able to say, fine, you didn't work at the best firm maybe that you wanted to over the summer, but if you can say you're in the top 20% or the top 30% or the top 10% because other people would sort of slacked off, no one's going to be thinking about that. They're just going to see that you're at the top, and that's a great calling card.
And to that end too, something that goes hand in hand with that is people sometimes that are farther down in the class that don't realistically have a chance of getting hired at certain firms, whether it's right or wrong. It's just the way the firm sets up criteria. I think really do themselves a disservice and waste a lot of their time and agonize over the fact that they interview with these places and they get shot down, rather than wasting your time on a lot of OCI activity. You're better off spending the time on class, spending the time on maybe writing an article. And we've been fortunate. A lot of the people we hire have been judicial clerks and such, but I always look for people. And I used to do a lot of interviewing when I was at Sherman & Sterling and a partner there, but if somebody was a good student and didn't write, they had the opportunity to go on law review, or they didn't go on law review, or for whatever. And by law review, I mean now most good law schools have, and by good I mean a big percentage of law schools, have 4 or 5 journals that you could write for. There's so much benefit in edited writing and having your work vetted, because all your grades are, and again depending on the school, it's 4 maybe 5 classes each semester. You've gotten whatever your grades are. You're a good test taker. That's good. It's some indicia of being smart, but if you want to take the time to write an article and get published and have it edited, to me, that says a lot. And so don't, burn yourself out on the OCI, work hard in your classes, find something that you can do to get your work edited and get it published. To me, that's a lot more impressive.
I think the lesson here is that David Latt did not look at my 3L transcript before he brought me into Above the Law.